Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Teacher Talk Show with me, Emily Florent Show. It's a bit different today. I've had to reschedule. I'm on a Friday, so the time is 6 p.m. Friday, the 2nd of July, and you're listening to me on the Late Show. In today's show, I will be joined with my co-authors, Tenny and Simon.
Live from London, this is The Late Show with Emily Follow Run Show on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/lu/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Teacher Talk Radio. As I said before, the time is now 6:01 on Friday, the 2nd of July, and you're listening to the Twilight Show, I should say, um, with me, Emily Florent Show, and Teacher Talk Radio. It's a bit different today. I couldn't do my Monday show this week, so that is why you're listening to me on a Friday at 6 p.m. when the sun is shining, the weather is lovely. So I hope everybody is having a happy Friday. And for, those working in schools, I don't know about you, but I've only got 2 Fridays left until the end of this challenging year. So in today's show, I'll be joined with two special guests. They are all history teachers, and we'll be working on a project together for Collins Publishers. And I'm going to interview them today. And I must admit that they have done more work than I did. I think a bit of too much than I can chew this year. So as always, please share the show, interact with us via the chat, or even better, please do call in at any time to pose your questions. And, as I said, to interact. And please use the hashtag TT Radio. So, as I said, today I'll be joined by my co-authors, and we've been working on a resource pack with Collins Publishers. And I'm really excited to share the work that Simon and Tenny in particular have put in regards to this project. So, I'm just going to read a bit about the project based on the blurb. So it will enable those that want to make their curriculum more, diverse, whether you're an English teacher, citizenship teacher, history teacher. This can be used because it also features more up-to-date and relevant knowledge up to 2020, the Black Lives Matter situation last summer. So it will be a photocopyable and editable teacher resource pack with digital resources, and it shines a light on the importance of Black British history, and it brings it into the classroom in a dynamic and practical way. Teaching slides, student worksheets, lesson plans, and a detailed narrative and audio and video resources bring history to life. And this is what's included in the resources. You'll see interviews with Miranda Kuffman, for example, that Simon interviewed, and he interviews so much more other historians to really make history come alive. And it aims to help all students age 11 to 14. And in my opinion, it can be even used for sixth form students and even primary school students and teachers understand how the past informs the realities of modern Britain, both the successes and also the continued struggles that exist in race relations. So this is a really good resource, I would say. And I do have Simon on the line right now. And hi, Simon, how are you?
Good, thanks, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, welcome. I hope you've had a good Friday. We're near the finish line.
I have. I've just dashed back from the hallowed playing fields of Hunwick County Cricket Club, where I've been doing cricket training with my little boy. So,
Oh, I hope you had a really good time with that. The sun's shining. Is it nice weather down there as well, where
well,
you're at?
it's positively tropical for the northeast, and the fact that it's not raining, it's above 10 degrees. So, It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because it's hot where we are, where I'm at in London right now. So lovely weather. So Teddy won't be joining us. Well, she'll try to join us
Okay.
today, but I think it will just be us two mostly. Despite you and Teddy doing the most work on this project, so I just want if you could just tell the audience who you are, what you do as your day job, and
Yep.
your list of other credentials.
Okay. My name is Simon Henderson, and I've been teaching for 20 years at a school called Teesdale School in Barnard Castle. Now, nobody knew where Barnard Castle was until Dominic Cummins decided to take a tour of the Northeast during the lockdown. So everybody knows where Barnard Castle is now.
Great.
I did my undergraduate degree and my PhD at Newcastle University. Um, I studied for my PhD part time whilst I was teaching.
Wow, I don't know, how was
Um,
that? That must be
about
hard.
Yeah, it was, but I had a day of research where I could lock myself away in a study. At that moment in time, I had neither a wife nor two small children,
Uh,
so that enables you to be slightly more selfish with your time.
yeah.
Um, and so I finished that,
And
and
what did you? Sorry, Simon. What did you do your PhD in?
so my PhD in my main area of interest is race relations, and it was mainly race relations in the USA. And my PhD was about sport and the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
Oh,
So
wow, that's interesting.
the monograph of that was published was called "Sidelined: How American Sports Challenged the Black Freedom Struggle." That was published
Oh,
by University Press of Kentucky.
oh,
And that
wow.
involved a lot of. I heard in your little intro about interviewing historians and oral histories and things like that. And actually, that that thesis and that work was based on about 50 to 60 oral histories with people who had played on college sports teams and had been in Olympic Games in the 1960s.
Wow.
So
Yeah, because oral history makes history, really personal. It humanizes it. So I love it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then more recently, so in my day job, I am both a head of history and a head of sixth form.
How do you balance
Um,
that?
um, I have a wonderful deputy, so I'll name check her, called Rebecca Thika, and she makes my life a lot easier because
Wow.
she is able to take lots of things off my desk so that I can concentrate on different things. And it's also a relatively small school, so we're only
Yeah.
talking about a school of about 700 students, and so therefore
Oh, wow.
um,
Yeah.
it's not it's not like a giant inner city school that would have maybe thousands of students. So that's what I do in my day
Yeah.
job, and more recently, I've been doing some events in the last couple of years, obviously pre-pandemic, for students in the schools that are part of the Multi Academy Trust that our school is a part of. So we've done some events mainly around diversity in the Northeast and about the history of um, race relations in the Northeast. And we were a partner school for the Freedom City 2017 um, celebrations and commemorations, which was the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King getting
Oh,
his
wow.
honorary degree from Newcastle University. And then we did a big event the year after that, which was 50 years since Martin Luther King's assassination. So I started to do a lot of work more recently in my career on the crossover between civil rights in America, which is obviously what I had majored in my research, and then also the connection between that and the Northeast, and the connection between civil rights in Britain and civil rights in America. And so that really it was the genesis for this project on Black British history.
Wow. Yeah, because you've done a phenomenal job with this. And I see more people joining. So please do pose your questions, or even better, call in and do ask Simon, as he's an expert, further questions. Thank you, Simon. You've done so much that you definitely should be proud of. Um, so how did you, come up with the idea of a resource? Because Tenny and I joined much later, but you started it off. You've done majority of the work. So how did the idea come about?
Um, so I guess some of it was inspired by events of last year and the Black Lives Matter protests last summer, coming in the middle of this pandemic that we're still stuck trying to get out of, and it obviously that sort of really highlighted the importance of I think a more rounded and a more informed understanding of Black British history, and a lot of the things that I was seeing posted on social media, a lot of the sort of culture wars that were raging in the media and continue to do so, revealed in many ways a sort of a lack of understanding, and also a sort of miscommunication on both sides of the argument. And it's, as a teacher, I always think that the way to try and affect change for the future is to try and provide more informed discussion and try and provide some more accurate and historically rounded information for students in a classroom, hoping that that then influences them for when they are growing up into adults. And so it came out of that, and I thought, looking at the textbooks that exist, looking at the resources that I had used to teach over the last 20 years, realized that there wasn't really a particularly sufficient resource for teachers out there to teach Black British history um, in a really sort of critical, rounded, and comprehensive way. And so I put a proposal together for a textbook originally that was going to be used to help do this. And it was a lady called Katie Sargent at HarperCollins who responded to my email and said, "Oh, this is really interesting. We're
Mm,
thinking really about doing something like this." And
wow.
then the project evolved during last autumn away from a textbook, and trying to tap into really what lots of teachers had been learning to do during the pandemic, which was to use more digital resources and um, use more things that could be used virtually. And so we cut a long story short, we came up with the idea for this resource, which is, yes, you get a textbook, you get a traditional physical thing that you can hold, but
Yeah.
you also get the download that you can then edit, and also to try and bring it alive in the classroom, not just provide a textbook, but provide lesson plans and resources, and for some of
Mm,
those resources to be digitized. So, as you mentioned earlier, um, interviews with historians, oral
yeah.
histories, um, interviews, but also some modeling videos talking students through how to answer certain questions. Um, and so the resource kind of grew into something that hopefully people can plug straight into their own classrooms, and most importantly can plug straight into their existing key stage 3 curriculum. I think people have teachers and people in all professions have had a particularly difficult 18 months, and I think teachers coming towards the end of this term are probably nationwide exhausted. And
Yeah.
this is traditionally the sort of time when teachers think about what are they going to be doing in September, and how's the curriculum going to look, and what changes are going to be made. And the beauty of this resource is that you can literally plug it straight into your existing Key Stage 3 curriculum. It doesn't have to be an onerous task of rewriting loads of schemes of work and redesigning your whole curriculum, because actually one of the one of the themes that was present in lots of these debates on television and discussions about the place of Black British history in the classroom was this feeling on one side of the debate that that Black British history was something that we sort of tag on we have a Black History Month, or we talk about it, and there was a frustration on one side of the debate that that was the case, and on the other side of the debate was the suggestion that this, that we shouldn't be having a token effort to look at Black British history. And ultimately, what this resource does is show that Black history is British history. We're not creating a separate scheme of work. We're not creating a separate little thing that we plug into the end of a Key Stage 3 curriculum to say that we've ticked a box of Black British history. This resource integrates with the current curriculum, Key Stage 3 curriculum that many schools will be teaching, to show
Yeah.
the reality that Black people are part of British history and have been right the way back to the Roman Empire. And it is not, Black history is not some sort of post Windrush phenomenon, but actually Black faces have been present in Britain and have been contributing to British society in amazing and myriad different ways for a long, long time. And I think the danger, as I mentioned, in the sort of current culture wars around this issue, the danger of separating Black British history into something that is different or distinct in a way that's unhelpful is that it doesn't actually help to provide a more informed understanding of history. It just potentially promotes a further divide. Um, and actually, what we what we should be showing is that Black people's presence in Britain is a constant thing, has been for centuries, and looking at that in a really honest and critical way. So yes, we are
Yeah.
celebrating the successes of incredible talent of Black people, and the incredible contribution that's been made to this country. And we are also facing the reality that this contribution has often been made in the context of prejudice and racism and inequality, and that the current position of Britain and the current place of Black and minority ethnic people in Britain has a context which is hopefully provided by this resource. And so it provides students with the opportunity to learn a more rounded history of this country, and as a result, have a more informed opinion of where we are now, and hopefully help to build something which is better for the future.
Yeah, I agree because there's about, I think, 9 chapters, if I'm correct,
Right.
in the book, and it goes all the way from the Romans to 2020 literally. And I love the bits that you wrote, Simon, especially in the latter sections of the book. And you've really brought to light hidden figures in Black history. Most of us have heard of Walter Tall and Mary Seacole and their mention, but also people that are unheard of, like Fanny Eaton, Celestine Edwards, Black people within religion and the church community, and the importance of that, which I really loved. And you also go to talk about the people like Olive Morris, the Black Panther movement in Notting Hill, Brixton, the Mangrove Nine, and Black police officers. So there's, and even the Bradford 12, and how the Black movement impact the Asian movements. And it's not London centric as well. There's elements of a Black presence throughout England. And I really love how you've brought those stories that are not traditionally told within the classroom to life. And that's why, even if you're a pastoral leader, for example, this would be a great resource for lots of years, for maybe even Black History Month. But we want to go beyond Black History Month, and we want to really implement this as well into the curriculum. So that's why I definitely think it's a resource for any teacher and all teachers and different phases within education. Yeah. So as we know, this resource isn't just about Black British history. Does it? As this, yeah, because this resource is, I should say, about Black British history. some might suggest that Black British history shouldn't be taught separately, and the fact there's this whole resource pack, this whole, you know, resources and this pack just on Black British history is kind of perpetuating that idea again, or the narrative that Black British history is separate from British history. So how would, you kind of combat that idea, even though we've provided this book?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the point of the resource is to be integrated within a key stage 3 curriculum that already exists. So the idea is not that you maybe teach lessons 1 through to 27 as a distinct study. You could do that, because under the national curriculum you could count that as a thematic study development from before 1066 to the present. That's fine, you could do that, but um, what's more, the spirit of the resource is to use it in conjunction with current Key Stage 3 curriculum. So in the introduction to the resource, there is a clear mapping of where in a traditional Key Stage 3 curriculum, for example, where elements of this resource would sit. So for example, one of the things that runs through certainly the earlier units of the resource is the idea that our 21st century understanding of racism and the construction of race is just that. It was a construction. Race was a social construction. It was not a biological reality. And scientists will tell us that DNA suggests that race is not actually a scientifically proven thing that exists. It's a social construct.
Yeah.
So, for example, the resource talks about in Unit 1, which is part of the unit that you wrote, Emily, talks about Black people during the Tudor era, and also Black people
Yeah.
during the Roman Empire. And Black people in Britain at that time were not judged by the color of their skin in the same way that you and I would understand in the 21st century. So that what dictated a person's status in society was their social rank, not necessarily their the color of their skin. And so
Yeah.
it points, that early unit points to challenging a perception of Black people in British history, which could be taught as part of a study of the Roman Empire, as part of a study of Tudor England, not as let's just do something on Black history to tick a box, but actually to provide a more comprehensive and rounded understanding of what Britain was like at that time. And it also helps to introduce students in that period to a different view of Black British history, and a different view of Black people in British history, to be more precise, than possibly is often the case in classrooms. So often the case in classrooms is we get to year 8 and we do the abolition of the slave trade. And so we start immediately with a conception in the minds of many students of Black people as victims of enslavement. And that's the sort of narrative that then continues. And we sort of take for granted then that this is Black people's place in British history and this is how things work. And that then provides the context for where we are now. But actually, in the second unit of the resource, which is heavily focused on the construction of racial identity, and is focused on Georgian England a lot as well, is
Yeah.
looking at the way in which during the late Tudor period and during the Stuart period and during the early days of the British Empire, that actually race was constructed, legally codified in British colonies in order to justify the slave trade. If it wasn't the other way around, it wasn't that racism dictated that the slave trade developed. The slave trade developed because of economic motive, and then actually a construction of race came afterwards in order to justify that. And so, again, that could be discussed as part of a broader topic on the 17th century. And then that then provides the context for a study of slavery and Unit 3, which focuses on the economic advantages that Britain developed as a result of the slave trade, and then also the economic advantages that Britain had as a result of the way in which slave owners were compensated for the emancipation of enslaved peoples. That then feeds directly into the Industrial Revolution. So actually what this resource is doing, far from providing a separate subset study of just Black British history, it's actually providing one thread that could run through a Key Stage 3 curriculum. So if you think about what, history, as somebody said, is not just one thing after another. What binds history, what binds our understanding of history, is how history is knitted together by certain themes, like the construction of gender, the construction of race, the class struggle, by power and conquest, and by imperialism and nationalism. These are the threads that run through a Key Stage 3 curriculum. One of those threads is the construction of racial identity and the construction of race, and this resource is looking at one of those threads, but within the wider fabric of Britain from the Roman period to where we are now. And so if really we're going to have a full understanding of British history, then we need to look at all elements of that sort of fabric and all the different elements of British history that knitted together. And so this resource hopefully would allow people to integrate Black British history into their existing Key Stage 3 curriculum and think about teaching it in that way as part of a broader understanding of Britain.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It can be integrated in terms of what is already there. And I think what's great about this resource, it makes teachers' lives easier. The groundwork's being done, research being done. It's literally just, as you said, slotting it in, um, to complement what's there. So how are you integrating the materials into your lessons so far? And have you tried the materials and lessons and resources?
Well, actually, I'm sure many teachers will be familiar with this. There was a sort of strange period between Year 11 students finishing their controlled assessments
Oh, yeah.
and that informed their teacher assessed grades, and actually sort of leaving the building. And so I had a class where I happened to have them for 6 hours one week. And yes, they were Year 11, they weren't Key Stage 3 students, so they're a little bit older. But I chose one of the units. Unit 6 is about immigration and reaction. That's what it's called. And so I taught the lessons in that for that unit to this class of Year 11 students, who, given that they were relatively fatigued by having done all these assessments and weren't necessarily delighted about new learning when they were quite exhausted, I thought this will be a good test to see how engaging the material is. And I was pleasantly surprised that they were immediately sort of hooked by this stuff, despite that they were sort of reached saturation point with the sort of effort levels that they'd been putting in. And one student said something right at the end of one of the lessons, which stuck with me actually. And she said, "Sir," she said, she said, I don't remember doing this when I was in Year 8 or Year 9."
Yeah.
She said, "But I think I should have."
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so they were learning about, in that unit, they were learning about the Mangrove 9, they were learning about the Notting Hill
Wow.
Carnival,
Because we
they were
tend to
learning about
think that civil rights is just in, the USA, but actually there
absolutely,
was a civil rights movement in the UK, and most people in year 8, like I do in high school, we teach civil rights in the USA as part of our year 8 curriculum. And because of this resource and the work that you've done in the latter half of it, um, I'm going to change my civil rights unit to a comparative unit, so that it features, everything that you've written about in terms of
Yeah.
Olive Morris, Mango 9, Bradford 12. So like literally, as the groundwork has been done, and it's not
Yeah.
like I have to rejig the wheel, because I'm just literally changing the inquiry and using the information.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
hopefully, actually, although the resource is packaged as here are 27 lessons, here are the worksheets, here are the PowerPoints that go with them, here are all the resources you need. There's actually more you could do if you wanted to, because each of the 9 units has 5 elements to it. So that's actually 45 elements there, and there are 27 lessons that have been drawn from that. So some of the resource provides context and provides comparison that students could easily, that staff could easily use to develop different lessons or take things in a different direction. And so for myself, for our Key Stage 3 curriculum, we will be starting from September. We already had some of these things in there, but we will be starting to, just as I said, to integrate these elements throughout our Key Stage 3 curriculum as one thread that runs through that curriculum.
yeah,
And the other thing that's really good is that I think the danger sometimes with Key Stage 3 history is that it can lack a little bit of rigor sometimes. It can lack a little
yeah,
bit of, because you're dealing with mixed ability classes a lot of the time, because students might have had a varied experience of history at primary school. Sometimes what's actually taught in the classroom can lack a little bit of the skills that students are going to need for when they are in GCSE and A level history, or really just the skills to be a good historian, and kind of wider transferable skills to do with extended writing and critical thinking and analysis of material. So in each of the units there is an assessment task, um, and there's also a model answer or a model video which is on a different task. So you've really got 27 lessons plus at least one other that you could use if you wanted to as a preparation and then assessment lesson. So the core skills that are tested in the assessments are the ability to explain changing continuity over time, the ability to evaluate primary sources in historical
yeah.
context, the ability to test an assertion and evaluate that assertion. So you've got a lot of skills there that are used certainly in GCSE and A level history. Evaluating historical interpretations is a really big skill that students need to learn, not just for future study of history, but actually being able to critically evaluate material. We live in a post-truth fake news world, and so the
Yeah,
skills of being able to interrogate a document, to put it in the context of what you already know, to consider the usefulness of the material, the provenance, that's actually a skill that's really important for students to navigate an understanding of the world around them and which information they can and can't trust. So there's lots and lots and lots, hopefully, that's the idea, that 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 teachers can do with this. So there's already a very good use for it in the way that I've described, to be able to just slot the lessons into an existing scheme of work. But there's also much more that teachers can do with that resource, and there's much more that can be used creatively, to develop student skills, to maybe take the topic area in a different direction. The 27 lessons with the resources and with the is the sort of minimum that you get in here. There's a lot more that you can do with it as well.
I definitely agree. And there's so much in it, as you said, in terms of, um, we tend to teach things as well, like Tudors, and we've got a section on in the book on Black Tudors, which could be added to the scheme of work, and also not just um, Key Stage 3, but it's going to be so helpful because I'm in year 9 to 10. We do Excel GCSE, and
Yep. They just
our
got that
current
new migration module.
yeah. So the current thematic paper we do is crime punishment. It's so boring. So I'm happy to be moving to migration. And there's a whole section on migration on, the Bradford 12, on the Bradgrove 9, on
Yeah.
Brixton riots, and all of that. You've literally done the work for me, for me, Simon. So any teachers, moving
Anytime,
to
Emily. It's fine.
my migration, honestly, this resource pack is fantastic, especially um actually everything in it was really linked to the specification of there, so that will not just help key stage 3 but also key stage 4. And if, for example, key stage 5, even, for example, students can do their coursework on whatever they want. And
Yeah.
I, in the future, I really like to, and we do OCR at A level, and I really want more students to pick, UK civil rights
Yeah.
as part of their coursework. And again, this is a great starting point in terms of the research that students need to do, and to get the marks for AA1, which is the knowledge. And it's a great resource pack because there's model answers that can form a lesson, and there's assessments as well. So it's really well resourced. So it's an excellent idea, Simon.
I think
um,
that's very nice of you to say, Emily. And also, um, because the sort of guide, the textbook, if you like, that was written aimed at teachers. Now,
yeah,
in the lessons, there are sections of that that students will use, and they'll read that in order to gather some of the context. But that can be edited, um, so that you can sort of differentiate. But what it means is that resource, as you said, can then be used for Key Stage 4 students or Key Stage 5 students. It can be used as a starting point for further reading.
yeah,
The guide itself is quite densely packed
yeah. It's
with
very
knowledge.
comprehensive. Yeah,
Yeah, that people can use for other purposes than just the purpose that it can be used for in the Key Stage 3 resource.
yeah. Thank you, Simon. And in terms of, like, especially last year, 2020, the summer, there was lots of talk about diversifying the curriculum, implementing more Black history. However, not people started to think about, how Black history should be taught. And one of the things, common, patterns and things people have spoken about in terms of the pedagogy, the way in which Black history is taught, is not making out, not making Black people to be victims, and making them agents within their own stories. So how have Black people been empowered in this resource, and the victimhood being taken away, would you say, Simon?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the
Yeah,
very idea of the construction of race immediately um, takes the starting introduction that many students have to Black history as one of enslaved peoples who are victims. So
yeah.
immediately the narrative starts earlier, and we see how that victimhood and that difference is actually constructed.
Wow, yeah,
So that's one way, and actually also that's really important because if we're suggesting that the racial divides and racial differences that certainly dominated society for much of the last 1,000 years or more, um, if we're saying that was actually a constructed thing that took place halfway through that period, it wasn't like that from the beginning,
yeah,
then then first of all we're already saying, well, this is a different narrative. It's not a narrative of victimhood. And secondly, the all throughout the resource and the lessons, the focus is on Black people who are achieving incredible things, sometimes just in their own personal experience, so just in their own life and the way that they've overcome difficulties, but oftentimes also having a massive impact on a wider understanding of British history.
yeah,
And so, the resource is an honest account of race.
Yeah,
It
because it
doesn't pull
doesn't
any.
shy away from the
It doesn't pull any
reality.
punches.
Yeah,
You know, there's a lot of stuff in Unit 9, which is on Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of stuff um, as you said, a lot of stuff about police officers. There's a lot of stuff about the relationship between the black community and the police. There's a lot of honest discussion of where Britain finds itself now and what the context of the Black Lives Matter movement was. But it also celebrates successes all the way through. It's
yeah,
not just a story of intolerance and inequality. That provides the context a lot of times, but it provides the context to stories of triumph and success and stories of individual endeavor and overcoming obstacles. And I mean, one of the things that that I thought about when I was conceiving of this resource was, if I look at, we've got a sort of main history classroom in our school, has massive loads of bookshelves at the back, and um, it has books from the last 20 years and before. It's almost like a little sort of museum archive in itself. And there's a lot of books there that are there, and I can never bring myself to throw books away, but we
yeah,
haven't used them for years. And I looked at all of these books, and I thought, if I was a black student in this classroom, what's in those books for me? Like what's how am I in any way um identifying with the things that are in
mm,
those books? And the
yeah,
reality is that I'm not, because those books that were written, a lot of them maybe 10, 15 years ago, even the books on the slave trade, still start oftentimes from a real position of like, here are black people who are being enslaved and who are victims. And so they're not hearing in those books about Olive Morris. They're not hearing about Xavier Asquith. They're not hearing about um, all these, hearing about Walter Tull, but they're not hearing about Arthur Wharton. They're not hearing about Eni Aluku. They're not hearing about all these people
yeah,
that are incredible role models. And I say role models not just for black people, but just role models, full stop. But obviously, um, for maybe black people, black students growing up and wanting to see some people in the past that they can identify with, and they can be inspired by, that there wasn't a lot in those books. So hopefully this resource will help to start to redress that balance, and that presents a picture of Black British history, and of British history where um, we do see agency. And it's not something that we question, do we? We don't say, oh well, in British history, is there enough of voices of British people? Because we're making an
mm,
assumption a lot of the time that when we're talking about British history in the past, we've been talking about predominantly white people. Well, British history has lots of people achieving, has lots of people certainly writing their own stories and contributing to creating a future, who are black people and white people and Asian people. And hopefully this resource does look at black British history as something where black people are contributing massively to British society, rather than seeing a history that starts with slavery and that informs our understanding going forward.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with that. We're now going to go to the news, so
Okay.
we're going to take a short break. Those that are listening live, please do feel free to pose questions, or even better still, call in to ask Simon and myself some questions, or just to make a comment. So over to the latest educational news.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. A group of almost 50 Conservative MPs has called for the Prime Minister to put an end to the COVID bubble system in schools. The motion follows the release of data showing 279,000 children in England are isolating because of possible contact with a COVID-19 case. Whilst Gavin Williamson has suggested the end to the bubble system will come with the start of the new academic year in September, the MPs want Boris Johnson to act on the 19th of July, when current restrictions are set to be eased. The letter from MPs stated that children need normality, security, and certainty. If we are to have a hope of levelling up and building back better, we must restore children's school lives to normal so they can recover their health, well-being, education, and their futures. Blundell School in Devon has been forced to make a statement confirming that a former teacher at the school and current Love Island contestant Hugo Hammond will not be returning to his role following his summer in the famous villa. Mr. Hammond's appearance on the reality show has sparked debate surrounding how teachers feel able to spend their free time and the expectation on teaching professionals to maintain a certain image outside of the school gates. A viral TikTok video with over 6 million views has been showing UK students how to get a fake positive result on their lateral flow test. The user in the video experimented with lemon juice, kiwi fruit, and hand sanitizer to break the test into revealing a false positive. Whilst it is not thought to be a widespread issue, the video has led to calls for testing to return to schools to ensure accuracy. That was your latest Teachers Talk Radio News.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events. Every teacher loves stationery.
Welcome back. So I've been discussing with Dr. Simon Henderson about our latest resource on Black British history, and we discussed, how to use it, where it fits well into the curriculum, and so on. So Simon, I wanted to ask you, what do you have a favorite part of a resource that you particularly love teaching? Yeah.
I think my answer would be Unit 8, and Unit 8 is on. It's entitled "Running the Race," and it's about sport and pioneers of cultural change. And as I mentioned earlier, my my PhD research was about sport and the civil rights movement in America, and I often feel as though sports history is overlooked
Yeah.
from mainstream history. That it's almost as though it's looked down upon a little bit, when
Yeah.
actually, if you think about the culture, the sort of social history of a country, or the culture of a history, then certainly Britain, sporting culture and sporting history is incredibly important for understanding our concept of British identity and of where we are as a country and where we've been. We only
Yeah.
have to look at the events of this week and England's triumph over Germany, and everyone's excitement about the prospect of England going further in the tournament,
That's
to
true, and I
see
know
how.
the Welsh exam board, for example, does do a thematic study on sports through time,
Yeah,
as well as entertainment and leisure through time. It looks really interesting, but as
yeah,
I know, there's been problems with that exam board, so um,
yeah.
it's tempting, but I can't move there.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
think I think so. That's why I think if you look at so much of English identity, of British identity, is tied up in sport, is tied up in our pastimes, our sporting culture. You can trace that back to British Empire and the way that sport was used to spread British values and a sort of sense of cultural imperialism during that period. And so I particularly like Unit 8 because of the fact that it looks at the importance of football in British culture, in English culture in particular, and the place of black players in English football. It also looks at the importance of cricket to the British West Indian community, the importance in terms of Caribbean identity that comes from cricket. And so that's my favorite part of the resource. It's also one of the favorite parts of actually creating the resource, was the opportunity to interview Roland Butcher, who was the first black English cricketer who played for England in the 1980s. And so Roland was very kind to give me a whole afternoon. One afternoon, I was sitting in an office at work, and it was chucking it down outside, and he was in Barbados, and we chatted about his experience, and we chatted about his experience as a cricketer, but also actually his experience. He played football at a semi-professional level, and so he was able to talk about the influence of both sports on his life, and he had some really fascinating insights. And so we used that. One of the second lesson in that unit 8 on sport and race is basically focused on Roland Butcher's uh, oral history, and it's putting his experiences in the wider context of what's studied in that unit. And he was incredibly engaging. It's a really good watch, the oral history video, and I really enjoyed interviewing him and finding out about his experiences. And I think it's important for students to understand, and this is one of the things that is prevalent in a lot of the research and writing that I've done in the past, is that we have a sort of a popular mainstream understanding of sport as this sort of special arena in society that has the ability to transcend race. So, it's not about the color of your skin; it's about how good you are and much you succeed on the sports field. When, yes, there is an incredible power of sport to help break through racial barriers, but actually, the history of sport also shows us that sport perpetuates that divide and perpetuates some of the racial differences and injustice that is in the rest of society. And so, really, when you look at sport and race, you look through a prism that reflects light in lots and lots of different places. And that unit, hopefully, and the assessment task that goes alongside it helps students to see that there is a duality to the relationship between sport and race, which is really important, that I think that people understand.
So much, Simon, for sharing that. We know that Ofsted's new framework, it is based on the curriculum, and there's this whole idea of ensuring that we have a progressive curriculum, a progressive model. So, how does the resource prepare? Because it was intended, it is intended for Key Stage 3 students, but how
Yeah.
does it prepare students for GCSE and beyond, and also A level? Would you
Yeah, I
say?
think I think obviously one of the things that Ofsted focus on in the curriculum, yes, is about progression, but um, they're also conscious of Key Stage 3 curriculums in history having a sort of distinct purpose. What's the intent of your curriculum? What
Yes.
they're not particularly fans of is the idea that Key Stage 3 is a way of doing some stuff that you're going to do in more depth at Key Stage 4. So what this resource helps in terms of an Ofsted framework is, it, as I said earlier, it provides one of those threads that should be knitted through a coherent Key Stage 3 curriculum that allows people to talk about the real intent of their curriculum, about preparing students by helping them to understand the different themes that have helped to construct British, European, and world history. But it also, in the sort of skills that are embedded throughout the lessons and that are prevalent in the assessment tasks and the model answers, it just helps students become good historians. So it helps them to infer from sources, it helps them to evaluate sources, it
Yeah,
helps them
agree. Yeah.
to evaluate interpretations. Now, it so happens that those are generally the skills that are tested at GCSE and A level, and I have to say, um, those are the skills that are tested in when undergraduates are doing their degrees as well. That's what
Yeah.
makes you a good historian. Um, it doesn't mean that you have looked at all the exam questions that you need to do at GCSE and sort of dropped them down into Key Stage 3. So I think it provides, in terms of somebody talking to an Ofsted inspector or somebody doing a deep dive in history in your department, it provides a dual advantage in the sense that it allows people to talk about the real intent of the curriculum and where Black British history sits in that wider understanding of British, European, and world history. But it also helps students to progress in the development of some core skills that are really important for them. And I would say transferable skills, not just in terms of understanding of the world in general, but actually the the English literature curriculum that changed with um, the curriculum reforms in 2015 and 2016. There's a lot more, speaking to English teachers, there's a lot more requirement for students when studying English literature to understand the historical context in which a text is set, or the influences on an author who's written a particular novel or a piece of work. So actually thinking about provenance in sources, thinking about how context informs our understanding of the the utility of a source, or how context informs our ability to critically evaluate and interpretation, there's a lot that's helping students progress, not just in the history curriculum, but actually progress in a wider literary curriculum.
Wow, I definitely agree with that because there's so much from the resource that will enable students to progress, not just in GCSE, but as I said before, A level, and as you've mentioned, in undergrad and in their careers as well, because of the
Yeah.
skills that they build, such as, analyzing sources and not just taking things literally at face value. Um, so I know that you teach in a predominantly white school. There's
Yeah.
probably little, I don't know, black faces in your school. So how have students responded to learning about Black history in their lessons? Has it led to more engagement and deeper conversations?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our school population is probably it's less than 10% um, Black, Asian, or minority ethnic. So it's a predominantly white school population, and actually, um, generally in the northeast is one of the more um, predominantly white population part of the country. Um, I think it's really important that this resource is is to ensure that students have an understanding of British history. That's what's at the core of it. And
Wow,
I think
yeah,
and I think obviously schools tend to rightly construct a curriculum that speaks to the experiences and to the demographic of the student body. So it's not unusual in a school that maybe has a predominantly Black or Asian or minority ethnic population to um, have a curriculum that reflects that. So maybe more work on migration, more work on the influence of different figures in British history than you might see in a traditional curriculum. However, if, as this resource is aimed at showing, we are saying correctly that Black British history is in fact British history,
yeah,
then what this resource is doing is showing all British children the richness of Britain's past, and so the reaction of many students who, throughout my career I've tried to bring elements of racial history into different parts of the curriculum that I've taught in my own classroom. The experience, the sort of general reaction of students is to be intrigued, is to try and understand history from a different perspective, to try and understand how the past has been presented in different ways. And I think this resource is just one element of helping students to do that. One of the things I think it's really important that history develops is, yes, we've talked about skills like writing, but history needs to develop a sense of empathetic understanding in students. So you need to be able to look at something from multiple perspectives, and that means you need to have an empathetic understanding of the experiences of people who are different from yourself or grew up in a different part of the country or part of the world, who have a different cultural identity to yourself. But it also means you need to have an empathetic understanding to the views of other people. A lot of what we see on social media, and a lot of what we see in debate in the mainstream media is not a very proficient ability of people to listen to other people or understand other people. There's not really also an ability to have a discussion about something without and to have a disagreement without the disagreement being personal, or without it descending into a sort of us and them divide on Twitter or some other social media platform. And so I think it's really important, not just as part of this resource, but as part of the way that history is taught in classrooms generally, is to give space to for people to listen to the experiences of other people, and to listen to the opinions of other people, and actively listen, and then consider and reflect upon your own opinion or your own ideas in light of other people's. And I think a more informed conversation, a more informed debate, a more a greater willingness to listen to other people, really listen to other people, and try and find some commonality in experience is really, really important. And hopefully that resource helps to do that. And one of the things I think that often happens in discussions about racial identity and about race and the construction of race is that there's often a desire by some people to create a divide, when yes, we can acknowledge difference, and yes, we can look at the unique circumstances that have created different experiences for different people and different communities of people in British history. But we can also look for common ground, for commonality that allows for people to bridge different gaps in order to have a better understanding of how Britain's past is knitted together.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You've said really like profound points that have also touched upon educating the whole child to enable empathy and sympathy, which I wholly agree with. So my final question is, how would you respond if teachers say, I'd love to teach Black history, but I'm not confident to?
I would say buy this resource, and
Yeah.
you'll feel confident too,
Yeah.
because I think you would see in the narrative guide, in the sort of resort, the textbook bit, if you like, that comes with it, you'll be able to see clearly in that an ability to understand the context of Black British history. It's a great starting point for people to research and to understand and have a better understanding themselves. And the lessons that go with it are done. They're ready to go. They are fully resourced. They're not just ideas that you then have to create a lesson yourself. They literally take you through a connection phase of a lesson, then an activation stage of a lesson, a demonstration, and then a consolidation. They have lesson objectives. The lesson plans themselves give teachers ideas of what to probe students for, ideas of how to stretch and challenge students, different questions that can be asked. The PowerPoints have all the resources on, the digital downloads with the historians' interviews and the oral histories. It's all ready there to go. It's all nicely packaged up, and all it is waiting is for somebody to unwrap it. And really, it should empower people who maybe feel as though they don't have the time, or they don't have the expertise, or they don't have the confidence. Hopefully this resource would help them to feel more empowered, more confident, and it would save them a lot of time as well.
Well, thank you so much, Simon, for sharing that. Because some people feel awkward in terms of teaching about Black history and feel quite shy. So I do believe this resource is like it's holding your hand through it all, and it's really comprehensive, so much knowledge. So I know most teachers, especially white teachers or different color teachers, always feel, what if I am about to say the wrong thing, or what if I'm not sensitive or whatever. But
Yeah.
do not fret. That's what the resource is there for. That's what the lesson plans are there for. The lessons, the narrative guides, the assessment. So it is a really comprehensive and well thought out resource to just guide you through the way. And also, so we're coming to the close of the show, and I just wanted to thank Simon for being interviewed. We were supposed to do it on Monday, but something came up, family matters. So as a result, he was kind enough to come on today to be interviewed. Just wanted to echo as well, although it is Key Stage 3 history resource guide, it can feature into English, Victorian literature in English. For example, if I don't know, you're teaching a book that is set in the Victorian period, or Unit 9, Black Lives Matter, which is about protest, reform and justice, can be used in terms of, citizenship. And it can also, this resource guide is an excellent resource guide for commemorating key individuals, commemorating Black History Month, or even World War One in assemblies, looking at the impact of Black soldiers during the war effort and also the home front. The book does come out. It's published in September 2021, hopefully. And if you want to pre-order, you can pre-order on www.collins.co.uk /Black British History. So that is www.collins.co.uk /Black British History. Simon, did you have any closing remarks or anything you want to add before we close?
No, just to say thanks very much for having me. As a 42-year-old who has limited technological skills, thank you for talking me through how to actually use Podbean.
No, it's fine. It's a pleasure.
And it's been a real pleasure. And I hope that people listening, or who people might listen after and download, I hope that it's been an interesting listen, and check out the resource. I think it will hopefully bring Black British history alive in classrooms, and ultimately show, which is its main purpose, that Black history is British history.
Excellent. I love it. And make sure you do follow Simon on Twitter. His @ is @beyond F and F. So @beyond F and F. And our other co-author who couldn't be on the line today, please do follow her as well. And her Twitter handle is @Tenny Ola Dehin. I hope I pronounced that right. So that's TENIOLADEHIN. So thank you again, Simon, and thank
You're
you
very
for
welcome.
those
Thank
that
you
have
for all those that were listening.
tuned in. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, you take care, Emily. Take care,
You
everyone.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.